My name is Zach Gardner, the chief architect at Keyhole Software. And about October, November-ish last year, I set off on a little bit of a quest. I had talked with people about generative AI for a number of months. I had been learning a lot of things, but big apologies, I had never gone and recorded the things that I was talking about. I was talking with VPs, with CEOs, with people from all walks of life on how they were using generative AI. And unfortunately, it didn't occur to me until my tummy was full of turkey. You can tell that I have a 9 and a 6-year-old I refer to as a tummy, that I should really be putting these out for just general consumption. This is a huge topic. This is something that is going to affect nearly every single industry that I could think of. And it's time, ladies and gentlemen, that we get some of this stuff on the record. Today, a man that I met at a conference at UMKC, correct? It was a
UMKC,
Saturday.
DevFest, yep.
Was it before or after things? It's all a blur.
Right after, first part of December.
Okay, very, very cool. So, Matthias, you are the CEO of FluentC, as they tell me. Welcome to the program.
It's great to be here, Zach.
Awesome. And for our more litigious friends that like to pick bones with, recordings, the things that we're saying, the views and opinions expressed in this program and the views and opinions of the participants do not reflect their employers, their trade organizations, any loyalty cards they have to grocery stores, any book clubs that they are members of. It's just two people. We just happen to hit the record button when we're talking. That's all. So with that out of the way, can you give the audience a little bit of a background on how you got into technology? What was your first job? Do you remember your very first computer or your very first program? That's a popular one.
I do remember my first computer. It was orange screen. It had one color. Nice. It was 1987. I was 6 years old. Nice. And I started writing software probably by the time I was 8 in one color. I still have my Windows 3.1 machine. It still runs with a blazing 61 megabytes of RAM and a 100 megabyte hard drive. I still have that. And so I started, I got in technology the curious way. And so it really started by taking apart existing applications, really reverse engineering how everything worked. I started my own web development application design firm out of high school and ran my own firm for about 13 or 14 years. And so really got into it out of the curiosity and the love of what technology can do. And I've been here since the 90s, which is my daughter has informed me is last century. So it's been a pretty fun ride. And then since then, I've been doing large scale. I've been in the healthcare industry, IoT, in oil and gas, mining, tons of different industries, tons of e-commerce. I'm an original contributor to WordPress. So I've really been around technology for the last 25, 26 years in a professional capacity. And, right now and one of the consistent problems that kept happening is the localization and globalization. Everyone builds an app for the language they're in. Everyone only thinks about the users in front of them. And so that's what really drove me to start FluentC, is it had to be easier to find some way to let you developers and product owners say, click, and now we can serve the rest of the world. We can add billions of potential users, and all we did was hit click. And so it really was at the heart of, when dealing with healthcare, sorry about that. When dealing with healthcare, it's at the heart of patient outcomes. If a person, you go into the hospital, you don't speak English, you're Spanish speaking, it says it on the wall, you can have an interpreter. They bring a person, a loving, caring person to the room to teach you Spanish and to work with the doctors and get you great care. And then they hand you your output notes in English. They give you an app in English. And you have to continue the rest of your healthcare journey, not in Spanish. And that hurt me at the core, that I was missing all of those patients. All of the times you're a tourist in a foreign country and you looking for healthcare, I have had experience with that, and you're just lost because it's not native to you. That was something that was a challenge I really had to take on, and AI is helping us lead that.
Very, very cool. I think accessibility, being able to widen your potential base of people that you serve, especially for hospitals, is such a no-brainer. The only barrier to entry is that you just don't support Portuguese, you don't support Tagalog. Like, that's a really dumb reason to keep someone from using your services. And it would
Yes.
pay for itself like relatively quickly, kind of putting my business hat on. So no, that's really cool. So talk to me a little bit about how you're using generative AI in your personal life as well as your professional life. Because I imagine that natural language processing, being able to take some input string and just say, hey, give this to me in Spanish, like that. That's a pretty compelling use case.
Yeah. Yeah. I use generative AI all the time. It really is um, useful in that, quick translation processing. So So back to the question. Generative AI is important in all aspects of pretty much everything everyone does now. It has completely disrupted the language technology sector. It has completely changed the way we communicate because now we at least can get something that's reasonably fast, reasonably quick in our interpersonal communications. If someone sends you a Slack or text message, it's relatively fast using GenAI to get a translation of that. And those type of tools are really good. When we're trying to communicate to a global audience, our customers are global. They come from all different languages. When we get support contacts, it's relatively easy to use Gen I in your just to have that basic communication. It gets a lot harder when you're talking about a place where you can't type the text. Like in your app, if you have a logo, if you have a back button, and you want to translate the word back, are we talking about a spine or a direction? Is Turkey, back to your tummy story about the turkey, is it a country or is it food? And so Gen AI helps us use some of that in context, and we've built some of the tools on top of that that really help make that distinction that you were talking about, your stomach area where you put turkey, and not a country, which is actually one of the most common mistranslated things on the entire internet, is back and then turkey. It really is often translated as the food. It's really kind of funny.
Interesting. So the week that we're recording this, it's the week of Friday, March 22nd. There have been two interesting pieces of news that have come out that relate. I mean, every single week there's something interesting that comes out related to generative AI, but the two that I wrote down as you were talking about, one of them was an article I read that I actually posted on LinkedIn here in 20 no 38 and 39 minutes, is about someone running Mistral on the Grok LPU. So like, CPUs, like that's your computer that was a single color orange, it was
Mm-hmm.
running on a CPU, central
Right.
processing unit.
Yeah.
The GPUs are what these large language models have been traditionally run on because they're originally designed for graphics, which required, very fast, highly parallel, very math intensive computations designed like for that use case. People were using it first to mine Bitcoin, which,
Yep.
it has
Uh,
now jumped back up in price.
yeah.
But the other thing that they have found they're really good at is running these large language models. But you still need like massive GPUs, and they're getting snatched up left and right. I mean, a lot of people thought that the tickets to the Taylor Swift concert were the hottest thing in town, but I think just the shipment of the GPUs, like that probably went quicker. So Grok, what they came out with is a language processing unit, which is specifically designed for running these large language models. It's not available to consumers yet, like you and I,
Mm-hmm.
directly. We have to go through their cloud, and you can get sub-second responses because they've been finely tuned like for this use case. But that then leads me to the other thing that I saw about Gemini. So Google's AI Gemini in the news for a couple weeks ago for a variety of reasons, which we
Variety of
will
reasons. Yep. All
we
sorts
will
of
not
reasons.
cover.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
But Apple's actually been looking at how far ahead Google is outpacing them on having AI running on the edge device. Anytime you use Siri, on this wonderful device, it doesn't run on the device. It has to send it out, wait
Yep.
for the response back. Being able to run generative AI on your phone, Apple is way behind the times on that. So they're looking at Google to be able to get Gemini like running on their phones, which is real. It's real interesting that like a
Yeah.
Apple is a direct competitor of Google when it comes to phones, but they're like, hey, give me some of your technology.
Yep.
And so I'm curious, in the work that you've done at FluentC, in the use cases that you've seen, how critical is it to be able to have like offline support? Are our edge devices even really at the point where we could run these large language models, or is just internet connectivity going to have to be an MVP requirement?
Yeah, see, that's where we're running into that fork, right? Because we had this in IoT, we had this in the industry age, industrial IoT, where we had to run it at the plant because the plant is in the middle of nowhere and has poor bandwidth. And so we're going to run back into that problem, especially when you start talking about healthcare or financial data. You can't train these models on public data. ChatGPT can use your inputs and your outputs and your yes or no's to retrain data. So there's a big push in the financial and the healthcare industry to move it to their own models. And without this type of, LPU type of system, that's going to be impossible to push it to the edge. But that's where you really want intuitive language processing, but it's so much data. I mean, the Llama one was like a terabyte to download full Llama, and it only speaks English. And so once you start adding all of these other languages in and train them on multi-language, the data is going to get bigger and bigger. And that's the edge is where it has to go for at least the scoring. And if there was quick responses, common responses, if we could teach the models at the end to get scored at the edge, then it would be much different for the language processing. If you could have that quick, fast interaction, McDonald's is working on changing the ordering from even pushing the buttons to talking to the AI and putting the language model interactive in those first person use cases. But until the bandwidth to the local storage gets better, you're stuck on that bandwidth. You only have as fast as the internet can go. And there you're talking large cluster farms and things like that. That should probably be better used mining Bitcoins at this point. But
yeah. I know it was above oh shoot, I just had
it
it
was
up on my watch.
70K.
Yeah, it was above 70 and then it actually went down. Oh, it's at 34 right now. It went down after Nvidia announced the new GPU chip because it was going to be less computationally expensive. Well, you're going to be able to mine them at a much faster rate. The supply is still
Yes.
static. Satoshi and his, infinite
Yeah.
wisdom
Yeah. Yeah.
made sure of that, but it's like you increase the ability for people to mine these things, which then decreases their value.
The
Super, super
value.
interesting.
Yep.
It
Yeah.
kind
So
of,
yeah, the edge. Yeah, the edge. Back to that. Oh, sorry to cut you off, but yeah, the edge is going to be an important part, and then how you secure that. But that's going to be super disruptive over the next 3 to 5 years. Who can capitalize that? Who can push this all the way out to the edge users and actually process on the device?
mhm. Yeah, I've been playing around with that a little bit. I mean, you mentioned Llama. I've been using Ollama, downloading the Llama 2 model on my Windows machine. And I mean, she's beautiful, but she is, kind of a few years behind the times. I'm gonna have to sell her off to the glue factory here in a little bit. It kind of goes to Moore's law as well, where
Yep.
especially in our field, it has an exponential rate of growth where it's like every 2 years, it's like twice as fast as it used to be. And a lot of people are getting into the generative AI game thinking that they can sort of outsmart these people that already have a head start on them, following Moore's curve. I was reading an article yesterday, day before, it all kind of blends together, about Morgan Stanley. Back this time last year, they got in their heads that we can have our own large language model. We have all this financial data. We can use RAG, retrieval augmented generation, to
Yep.
be able to, sort of train this model to get it like prompted up. And then we'd be able to use it to make, more money, which, yeah, totally fine. That's
It's
totally
fun.
good use
Yeah.
case. And then in June, it was June or July, sometime last year, when GPT-4 came out, they had spent like millions of dollars internally developing their own like large language model. And then they tested it against GPT-4 and it smoked it. Like it was just like not even in
Not
the
even
ballpark.
close.
It was
Yeah.
like multiple, it was like 10 or 20 percentage points ahead of what it was doing. So I'm curious if you've had any experience like creating your own large language models. Are you running anything locally by chance? That's my new thing that I like to ask people.
Yeah, we are working on that. We think there's some room in the multi-language technology space to really get that human touch, because most large language models are not fed enough non-English content.
Mhm.
That's why there's a lot of that social bias into what is this and what is that. Back to Gemini's problem, there's a little social bias in just how you fed it. And GPT is fed so much data, but a lot of it's structured formal data. A lot of it comes from books, white papers, everything available, and not necessarily social media slang. Try to get that ingestion and then get the models, because what they're actually modeling is actually almost open source. Like, it's the actual model that ChatGPT uses is not really that innovative or creative. It's just literally getting so much data, terabytes and terabytes and petabytes of data into one pre-processed vector database. That's where it's all at. And so you talk about JP Morgan, like they would have to build all of that intelligence and then have it be secured, because most of their underlying data systems don't have individual unique data access rules. And this is why it's also touching into healthcare, is that that's one patient's data. Well, who has access to that? If you give it to the language model, now everyone has access to that. And how do you use things to identify that security risk? Because that's a HIPAA violation. If you say generate the name of a generic diabetes patient and then they put a real name, you've just exposed that PHI, because the AI didn't know that Dan Smith was actually a real person. And so that's one of the big concerns with generating yourself, is you don't have the data systems in place to feed it correctly. OpenAI has taken an approach of, they don't really care. If they can get their hands on the data, it goes in. And so, I mean, that's one approach. And there'll be a lot of different, I was just reading an article about one trying to do healthcare, Hippocratic.ai or something like that. They were trying to do, just a language model for healthcare. And they're taking patient data and patient notes and trying to do that. And it's super sensitive, and it's going to take a long time and a ton of investment. And in the end, it's probably not going to be as good as ChatGPT.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, OpenAI, when they came out with Sora a month or so back, everyone, like Google had released theirs, but it was like they'd already had integration with the Unity physics engine. I mean, they have a 6, 8, 10, 12 head month start on everyone else. It's going to be really tough to catch up in that particular relay. So I'm curious if you have any closing thoughts, anything that we haven't talked about that maybe we should have talked about.
It's some of the bias is in there inherently in all AI generated models and all LLMs, because the source data is not accessible from a global audience because it doesn't come in English or doesn't fit. And so, that's one of the things I'm personally working on, is try to fix that root cause problem, that if you read a book in French, it's only French words. It's not what the English meant to say for those words. And so that's going to be one of the bigger problems. And, it's a new tool. We're at the dawn of the first typewriter. I can't believe I have one of these, but it's the typewriter that got the first LCD on it, where you could type a sentence and then hit print, and it would type out the line. That's where we are at GenAI. We are right there. We just got the first typer that can use a typewriter, and I guess some of our audience will have to go Google what a typewriter is, but we'll have to figure that out. But yes, that's where we are, and everyone has to approach it with the blinders. Like, this isn't, a rocket ship right now. This is a cart and buggy, and there's a lot of security concern. There's a lot of stuff we have to make sure that the AI does, a lot of controls we have in place that have to get there, and we have to use it responsibly.
Perfect way to conclude the thoughts. If people want to learn more about you, learn more about your company, where should they go? What social media networks are you active on?
Yeah, our main website is FluentC.io, and we're trying to be more active on TikTok and LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess we'll see if that bill goes through Congress, if it's really TikTok, or if they have to rebrand it and have U.S. control over it.
Yeah. We're just gonna go ICAC, I guess. We'll just take whatever they have to do there. Yeah. We really like connecting with people. We go to a ton of conferences. We met at the Google Developer Conference. I'm really old school, despite not being that old. I really like handshakes, so I'm always open to that. Come talk to people, and really try to explain how the multi-language journey can expand your number of customers, and especially in the e-commerce flow, where all you're doing is shipping and fulfillment and some support. you just got billions of customers, and all you had to do was change the address on the label. And so that's exciting for me to talk to people about that. So yeah, FluentC.io is our main website.
I dig it. Well, it's always a privilege to get to talk to you. Always a good time. So thank you very much for coming on the program, and ladies and gentlemen, we'll catch you in the future.